podcast. Yeah.
Welcome everybody to Clang the podcast, now sponsored by the wonderful people at DRC Shipping. What do their services include, Pete?
So they include warehousing, pick-pack fulfillment, air freight import and export, ocean freight import and export, road freight to and from all major European cities, and they're pharma specialists. They've also got a specialism in publisher services, so exporting magazines and books worldwide.
Fantastic. For all your shipping needs and the export-import business, DRC Shipping, everybody. Check their website out. Now, enjoy the podcast. Good evening, Clangers. Welcome to another episode of Clang the podcast. I don't know what number this is. I don't really care, if I'm honest.
Probably about 11.
You reckon, with double figures?
No, I think we are into double figures now.
Right, well, I'm absolutely over the moon because we've only gone and nabbed the front man of one of the biggest bands in the world. We've only gone and got Baz Warne from the Stranglers. Baz! It is him!
Fellas.
It is him!
How are we?
What you got to say to yourself is, how the fuck did we get in, Pete? That's what you got to say.
Actually, I do believe I volunteered. Out from
You did.
Well, actually, that's which kind of makes it even more interesting. It's like, why the fuck did you volunteer?
Because I really like Smiley Barnard. He's a lovely fella. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. I don't like his drumming or anything about his professional life.
Thanks,
I
mate.
just like him as a bloke.
Thanks, mate. So to fill in you people at home very, very, very briefly, I had the pleasure of kind of joining the Stranglers for 4 days in March because Jim, the drummer, hurt his hand before the tour. So I got drafted in to rehearse up and absolutely loved every second of being in that band. And then actually didn't do any shows because his hand held out just, and it was just, wasn't it, Baz? He told me at the Albert Hall, he's like, if there'd been one more show, I wouldn't have been able to do it. As I was shaking his hand.
I mean, God love him. He came clean. He'd been struggling for a while by his own admission, and you'd see him sort of wincing every once in a while. But of course, being a trooper that he is, he never really let on. And then when it became apparent that he really needed to address it because it was a massive tour,
a massive set as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of material. And mate, how you got through that as fantastically as you did, just to let everybody know, we rehearsed with Smiley for about 3 days.
4 days.
And it was staggering how you learned all that stuff, mate. I mean, the stuff that everyone knows, that's fair enough, but the obscure, crazy stuff that we were going to do as well. I mean, how you got your head around that is. But Jim, he was very worried. It was and is fixable. I don't think he's had much trouble with it since.
No.
But he was told that it would be a very simple operation, and after that, it would be fixed forever. But we didn't have the recovery window, which is why we had a word with you. And God love you, every night you must have been sitting by that.
I did. And then it got to the point after 3 weeks, I was like, it's not going to happen, is it? I might as well go to a show. And did I tell you, Baz, the last two, I went to the two out of the last 3 shows, the last but one and then the last one. And the one in Portsmouth, I went with my mate.
I remember meeting you.
Yeah. And I was standing there, and he said afterwards, he went, that was hilarious. I said, what? He went, I just watched you count all night. He said, every song you were counting, like, you know.
Bless you.
Like, no way. And then the last one, because I knew I wasn't going to do it, I just sat and thoroughly enjoyed and loved it.
Well, I tell you what, I bet you didn't enjoy it as much as I did, because up until about 5 o'clock tea time of the day, I wasn't entirely sure whether I could do it or not, because after the Portsmouth gig, which is the one you mentioned, we had to pull the following night in Bristol, or the night after in Bristol, so that I could recover from a throat thing. And we had a Harley Street guy come to my hotel room in London. He was in my room for about 20-25 minutes. It was extortionate fee, but he gave me 3 antibiotics and 8 anti-inflammatories a day. So I was taking 11 tablets for 3 days.
Jesus.
And I was in the bath about 5:30 of the show day. My wife had gone out to give me some space. She'd gone for a wander. And I had all the soil in the bath. The doors were all shut. It was like a sauna, all steamy and medicinal. And I just felt, I know this is going to sound a bit cheesy, but I just felt it lift. It lifted.
Oh, really?
I whispered my way through the sound check. We still sound checked. There was a very strange kind of vibe between us because, you know, we were very, just apprehension, really. We were very quiet because it's, you know, it's certainly one of the biggest shows I've ever done with a band. And the Royal Albert Hall, I mean, speaks for itself. Right, and the reason that we decided to sacrifice the Bristol show was that 6-7 weeks later we had it rescheduled and we did it, and it was fantastic. But you wait 2 to 3 years for the Albert Hall. And you know, it was all hands, pull all the stops out, and it just went like a dream. And it also went in seemingly about 20 seconds. And before we knew where we were all patting each other on the backstage and drinking champagne, and members of U2 and all different.
Oh yeah, he's in there. He's in there. I'll clang him in a minute.
It was just nuts, you know. It was just nuts. It was great. It was really good fun. I'm really pleased with it. But to get back to the original thing, Jim, God love him, he lay on the floor, like a starfish, staring at the ceiling, thinking, "How on earth did I get through that?" I mean, I'm sure, Smiley, there were 2 or 3 occasions where you were that close from coming. I couldn't tell you where they were because
he said, Baz, he said to me that if you hadn't have cancelled the Bristol one, he didn't think he would have been able to do the Albert Hall because he said he reckoned that was like that's the last. He said I had one more gig in me, and because you did, so that would have been funny being parachuted into that one, wouldn't it? Just the one, yeah.
Do you know what? I was just thinking. I mean, I find this bizarre when I'm sitting there thinking like the Stranglers at the Albert Hall. I mean, that's sort of like brilliant. You know. I mean, brilliant. I'm going back. You know, one of the. So I need to get. And I need to get the fanboy stuff out of the way for a minute, Baz, if you don't mind. All right. The first album that I bought for myself was No More Heroes. I've been a massive Stranglers fan. They were one of the key influences on me starting playing bass with JJ.
Okay.
And he's just like, you know, he's to me the guy's an absolute bloody legend. And that, you know, that band is so embedded in my kind of formative teenage years.
Yeah. I think it's the same for a lot of people. I mean, you and I have got something in common there, Pete, because my first Stranglers album that I ever heard was No More Heroes at a party. Yeah. And I had to go back over to check the first album. And then, of course, Black and White from then on. I mean, well, the thing to remember, of course, is that the Stranglers did actually play the Royal Albert Hall in '97 with with John Ellis playing guitars about 3 years before I joined, and then we did it. We only did 2 tunes with an orchestra as part of the BBC Proms for Steve Lamacq. And we did No More Heroes and Golden Brown with a 50-piece orchestra.
Wow!
It was quite something to be on because we rehearsed with them in Maida Vale, and we went along in the afternoon to see them. They were all on one side with the music stands and all the glass partition separators and everything. And we were on the other side with our knackered old Marshall amps and, you know, and battered old guitars. We were massively impressed with the way that they did things, and they were massively and the guys were coming over and going, "Oh God, the freedom to be able to just do what you want." And I was sitting going, "Oh God, the schooling to be able to sit there and read music and you know what I mean?" So there was two sides of the same coin, but a real mutual respect. It was a very, very enjoyable experience, albeit brief, you know.
So how did it? I'll just put one more question in, then I'll let Smiley kind of run with it for a little bit, because I know he likes to run with it. But how is it going into a band of that size in the role that you've got and owning that in view of that history?
Well, I would say that if I joined the Stranglers initially straight away as the singer guitarist, it might have been a little bit more difficult. But when I joined, there was still 5. We had a singer,
Right.
Paul Roberts.
Yeah.
So I was the guitarist, and I stood at the side for 6 years, learning. I joined in 2000. It's an easy to remember, you know. So I stood at the side for 6 years and learned my trade, and and learned the politics of the band, learned how everybody interacts with each other, and diligently put myself away to learn practically every song that they'd ever committed down, just in case it was ever called on. So I was kind of lucky. When Paul left, we were looking around. I mean, it's been well documented now, but there was a lot of bad feeling between him and a certain member of the band, and it just didn't get any better. And we were in the middle of making an album called Sweet 16, and he came in to record one day, and he just hadn't bothered really. He hadn't, also, we were all living on a farm in Somerset. Paul was living in Brighton, and he would have rather have driven the 100 miles each way every day than stay with us. So that was creating a rift as well. And then one day he was particularly late for rehearsals, and the band didn't want to wait for him, so we started just rehearsing, running through the music, the 4 of us, and I stepped up to the mic and started singing something, and everybody looked at each other. So we kind of knew that we could do it if it ever came to it. And then he was asked, look, we had a 5-month world tour. We were going everywhere, and the management said to him, "Would you rather be at home, or you're going to have to go out on the road with these people, and if you're not getting on, it's just going to get worse." And oh God, so I loved Paul Roberts. He was my friend. He's never spoken to me since he left the band, but he was my friend, and it was a sad day when he left, but it was also not a surprise. It was inevitable, really. And so we had a gig in Weston-super-Mare, in Cheddar Gorge way, sort of, in about 3 weeks after he left. So we just dug in. We never said anything to anybody. JJ and Dave were just fine. I mean, they've always been, from the minute I joined the band, they were so supportive, and because they were so loved, revered, but also reviled, in equal measures. They banded together like a lot of those old school bands do. And I'm sure, we've all been in bands where it's you against everybody else. And the Stranglers were no different, They got such a bad rep and bad press. And yet the music was so fucking good, and so they just banded together. So when I joined, I was welcomed with open arms. I mean, Jet Black, God love him, he took me under his wing, and I never really came out,
That's the big wing, though, isn't it?
It was a massive wing. It was a massive
big
wing.
man.
It was a chicken wing, actually. And so we forged on, and we did a lot of toilet tours, as we like to call them. And we did every festival and little local thing in Belgium, France, Holland, Germany, you name it. We went everywhere, just these little weekend 5,000 village square festivals. We did stacks of them. And just became tighter and tighter and more accomplished and better friends. There was no animosity at that time. The guitarist that I replaced wasn't a particularly nice guy. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what he says if he watches this, he wasn't a very nice fella.
You've had your moments to get back at him now.
Well, there was always some issue with him. And you've got to remember that, all right, it's a rock band, but it's also grown men with lives, and you're not talking about 21-year-old boys in a transit van anymore. know. So we got on with it, and then when he left, Paul Roberts, when he left, it was like, well, we had 9 songs of an album in the can, and it's like, okay, what do we do? How do we approach this? Went away and thought about it for a weekend. Unbeknownst to me, Sil had said, management had said to Jet, Dave and JJ, what about giving Baz a shot? I will freely admit here and now that I've always considered myself a guitarist first and foremost, then a singer. Although I can't sing, I was always backing vocals, and and I grew in. I had to grow into it. So we did this gig in Western Supermare. Didn't tell anyone. It was a big crowd there. It's about 10,000.
And we
just didn't tell anyone.
We just. I mean, to be honest with you, we'd been. I know this might sound a bit blasé and a bit arrogant, but I wasn't nervous. I just wanted to get on and get it done. And once we got into, we would start with a song sometimes called "The Raven," and JJ would sing that. Paul wouldn't come on until the second number, and then continue on with the rest of the show. So we started with The Raven, and then
no one knew.
Paul didn't know, apart from the fact that there was only 2 microphone stands on the stage.
Oh, okay.
And it was just kind of a little bit of cloak and dagger, a bit of skullduggery.
That's really cool.
And then we started with something else. And something else, and you could see people in the crowd going, "Jesus Christ, it's just the 4 of them,"
Wow.
And then I said to the crowd something like, "And then there were 4," and the place just exploded. And and afterwards, as has also been well documented, we actually had, as far as I'm aware, they'd never done it before, and we've never done it since. We had a group hug after the gig. After the gig, we had a group hug and a big pat on the back. Jet Black was ecstatic, God love him. Dave just sat in the corner going, "Well, that was really good. Yeah." And JJ was just JJ.
JJ was just the coolest bloke on the planet, he always is.
He was just enigmatic, stoic. But I know him too well. I was just speaking to him today actually, and he sends his regards.
Oh, bless him, man. He's a clanging himself, isn't he?
Oh,
yeah.
That was the thing when I didn't preach it to everybody that I was doing it, but like when the ones I did, and the musicians were like, "What's he like? What's JJ?" JJ is an absolute hero in the music world. He really is, And I think because he's still there, and because he's still as cool as well. You know what I mean?
I mean, point of fact, we just played in Carcassonne in the south of France. Would you believe, with Status Quo, none other. And they were on first. They were on before us.
No,
wow, really?
They supported the Stranglers.
I know. And although they were one of my boyhood bands. I mean, it's down to Francis Rossi that I ever played Fender Telecasters. He's completely to blame. He was the only one that I didn't get a chance. I was set to one of the roadies. Is Francis around? I'd really like to speak to him and meet him and say hello. But he's 75, and they did the gig. I stood at the side of the stage talking about Fanboy Pete. I stood at the side of the stage, and they came on and started with Caroline, and me and the lads just all looked at each other and went, "Oh, for fuck! You kind of get it. Doesn't get much better than that,
12 gold bars, man. Yeah,
it ventured a little bit into cheese, and whatever, but the rest of the band, they got a bass player called Rhino Edwards, lovely fella, and they were all, I didn't know, because we just get into the gig and I just concentrate on looking around, getting into it. But what you don't do is look down here, and they were in about 4 rows back, the 4 of them, without Francis. They'd come out reserved seats and they sat there and watched the whole gig.
Amazing.
And then afterwards, just getting back to what you were saying, Pete, about it being a legendary band, that was the Stranglers and they wanted to watch us. So that was a good show. And then we're on motorcycles. We went all the way down to, I've just got off the motorbike on Thursday after riding nearly 2,500 miles. I thought it was going to be more than that, but
is that because Sil's cut the budget and you're not allowed to bus anymore? Sorry, Sil.
It's been talked about for ages, and because we had,
I heard you talking about it. I remember you talking about it.
Yeah, because we had 2 gigs in the south, pretty much in the south of France, close to each other. And plenty of time to get there and plenty of time to get back. I mean, we only did 2 shows, but the whole trip took about 10 days. It was fantastic. I'd just been up in the garage this morning and hosed off most of France's airborne insect life off the front of my bike. It's just unbelievable, the shit that was on it. But
did you stay at JJ's house?
Not on this one. No, it was a little bit too far out. He rode up from the south, more from the south. He lives down near Nice.
Yeah.
And we were playing up towards Toulouse, sort of Spanish border.
Yeah, we've just done that. Lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. So he rode across, met us, and then we rode across to one of the gigs together, and then he rode home. But we're talking about writing some new stuff, so I'm going to go to his house in the winter, I think, and spend some time there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So the first Clang I'm going to ask you is related, because obviously when myself and my super mate Phil, who's like the biggest Stranglers fan in the world, but when I said, "Oh, do you want to come with me?" he was like, "Yeah," and we went in and we met you and JJ obviously, and then obviously we were waiting outside the dressing room and this guy came in. Oh, excuse me, is this the dressing room? We were like, "Yeah." Oh, I think my coat's in there, and it was Adam Clayton.
Oh yeah.
Where's the connection with Adam Clayton then? Because that's U2, Stranglers.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big one.
Yeah, he's a big fan. I mean, there's lots of pictures of him online on stage wearing Stranglers t-shirts. Right. And he lives down near JJ, or one of his houses down near JJ.
One of them.
And also, they are starting, U2 have been putting together a rock and roll museum. And Adam was very keen on purchasing JJ's original green precision bass.
Wow.
The Peaches one and the one at the beginning of No More Heroes and all. Anyway, they came to a deal, so Adam actually owns that guitar now. Wow. And he bizarrely, oh man, I hope it's not going to start getting more clangy and name droppy here. Like it's just.
Yeah, man, that's why you're here.
That's why you're here.
That is why you're here. Trust me. The more the merrier.
You pair of cunts. I don't know.
We'll get it out of you.
I know. So another fella that lives quite close to Jay is a bloke called Jim McCarthy, and he's the original drummer in the Yardbirds.
All right, yeah.
Cool.
He's 80 now, Jim, and he's a lovely, lovely fella. And he had a birthday party last summer, and we were all invited. And because I mean, but imagine our luck when JJ and I went down and jammed with him, and we were doing Dazed and Confused and Over Under Sideways Down and all these Yardbirds closes just man. I mean, I sat at home here learning them in my very basement where I am now, heart full of soul and all. You know, wow. And I couldn't believe it. You know. Anyway, they've got a little band together called the Stranglers, cross between the Stranglers and the Yardbirds, and they do a lot of R&B covers and stuff round the doors in the south of France, just for laughs, you know.
Right.
JJ loves it. And so they asked me to play guitar, and I thought, oh my God, that's flattering, you know. But I live in England, and it's just not practical. So we went down to Jim's party, and I was flying in. And then it coincided with a couple of gigs that we were doing, so it worked out really well. So I flew into Nice. Anyway, I get a phone call from JJ. He goes, "Look, Adam is passing Nice Airport, and he's offered to pick you up and take you." And I thought, oh, all right, that sounds all right. So anyway, would you believe it? I get this text from Adam Clayton with a picture on, and he's going. I thought I'd send you a picture just in case you don't recognise me.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Okay.
I said,
What, the
mate,
bass player with
it's
U2? I think.
mate, I said, it's all right. I said, I kind of recognise you, you know. He said, well, I know who you anyway.
It's nice tash.
We had this mutual texting thing going on. Anyway, I get to Nice Airport and I come out and I'm looking. And again, what I was saying about you look in the distance, but you never look down. And I just see this guy waving and I look down and he's sitting about 10 feet in front of me. Hi, Baz. Never met him before. Gets in his car. What a lovely fella. Just like talking to a pal. I felt like I'd known him for years. It's about an hour to get to Jeers from Nice Airport. So we sat for about an hour in Adam's car, and I'm saying he's telling us about Larry Mullen not doing the gigs and got this big Dutch fella. I says, "What's it like? You know, what's it like?" And he was going, "It's just like talking to somebody who plays in the band round the corner." I mean, to be honest with you, and you never get really overawed, you know. It's nice to meet people, but you don't get. I think the only person I think I would ever get overawed with would probably be Neil Young or somebody like that. If I ever met Neil Young, I'd shit my pants. But other than that, people are just people. I don't care, you know. And Adam was lovely, so we went to the party and they had all this equipment set up, and I thought, wow, you know, me, JJ, Adam, Jim. There was another couple of guys there as well who we thought Jimmy Page it was before Jeff Beck died, and he'd been making noises about going, and I thought, well, I'd like to sit and have a crack with him. Yeah, but none of them showed. And then before we got a chance to play, the lads come up and whispered in my ear, "Do you want to go?" I went, "Aye, let's get out of here." You know what I mean? So yes, and that's very clangy of me. I don't normally do this.
That's why you're here, mate. That's why you're here. We're going to drink some more out here. Trust me.
I do not do this as a rule. But, no worries.
But it's the way it's done though. This is all supposed to be done in a sort of like, you know, a funny sort of like, not in an ostentatious like. Hey,
no. Well, that could never be me anyway, Pete. I'm not like that. You know.
But it's also. I think, Baz, what we're doing is we're giving people the excuse to do it, because people like yourself who are kind of, you know, with your reputation and cool for school and everything, you're not the sort of person who would do it. But this is a vehicle to do it. So people who we've had on who would never usually go, oh, and then I met Mick Jagger and then I met blah, blah, blah. This is the chance and people love it. You know, I remember when you said... I said to you, oh, you know, Stuart Pearce is a massive Stranglers fan. And you just casually went, yeah, I went to his wedding. I was like, you went to his wedding? You know what I mean? Stuart Pearce, he's a hero as well.
I just had a crack with him. He rang us when we were on our way down to Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago to get this boat across to France. We stopped for petrol and I saw that I'd missed a call from him. So I rang him. And he was in Germany, and it was, they just got to the finals, and he was. But Pearce, he's just we're just mates. I mean, he came to my wedding. He came to my wedding. I went to his.
Wow.
I was very jazzed to meet Sean Dyche, who I've always
really. Here we go.
I was always had a soft spot for him.
Yeah.
And a few other like old school footballers, but it wasn't a big star-studded thing. It was lovely, and it was just Stu and his lovely wife, and we've just been friends. I got introduced to him very, very early on in the band when Paul was still in the band, because I think they'd read somewhere that before, I think he was still playing at the time, and they'd read that he would G the team up by playing them punk rock. Clash, Stranglers, Ramones, Damned, Pistols, all that stuff. So they got in touch.
I think he did that in the days. Well, I think he did that in the days when he was playing at City.
Yeah,
I'm sure he used to do that.
Yeah. He's a massive music fan. And so the first time I met him, we were playing at Old Trafford cricket ground. In the Lankan Down Rain in Manchester. It's years ago. And in walked Stuart Pearce, and of course at the time I went, I did that.
I did that.
And he's another one that'll just put you at your ease and just be cool. And he was and we've remained very good friends, and we speak maybe once a month, you know.
I think that was one of the things when I was doing the Stranglers rehearsals. That was seriously in my mind that Stuart Pearce is going to be at one of these shows. You know what I mean? I've met him a couple of times.
Did you
No,
see him?
I've met him. He's been to an alarm show, a couple of alarm shows. So I've met him.
Aye,
He's
aye.
a really lovely man.
Yeah.
But I thought, if I'm actually doing a Stranglers show, that's like I could lock him in the dressing room and interrogate him for hours, man. You know what I mean? But, no, he wasn't at the two I went to.
He'll talk to you about football if you want him to. Equally, he'll talk to you about bird watching or making your own cheese or whatever. You know what I mean?
I wanted to get him. I wanted to get into Strummer with him because I know how much he loves like punk and everything. I wanted to get him and go. Did you know I used to play with Strummer? I wanted him to go. No way! And then let him go to me. I know. But I didn't get a chance.
Yeah,
I didn't get a chance. But yeah, there you go. So
he's a good egg. Yeah,
he really is. He's a lovely man. And, it's like that thing, though, Baz. I've said all footballers want to be musicians and all musicians want to be footballers.
Well, there's a correlation. There's a massive correlation, isn't there, between. I mean, I am no different. I come from the northeast of England and football runs through my veins. Yeah. Cut me in half and it says Sunderland FC through there for me
like
sins.
A stick of rock, aren't you?
Aye, exactly. For me sins. So me dad got us into that, and we were all. My younger brother Davey, there's me, there's Chrissy, who's under next one down. Davey is the third one down, and our Davey was that far. He played for Aston Villa, Sheffield United. He had all kinds of trials and everything, and so I were a footballing fan and. Music, northeast of England's a hotbed for music, as everybody knows, and it is for football. So,
apart from Stuart Pearce, who's the most famous footballer you've met?
Eddie Gray.
No, that's cool. Leeds.
I did it.
Leeds legends.
I've been in the frame to do they're making a documentary about Eddie Gray. And because I live in Leeds, on the outskirts of Leeds, I've got some pals here now, and one of them is a lifelong to Leeds United, where I am to Sunderland, except more so. And he asked me to do the music, and I thought, wow, it'd be great to do music for any documentary. Never mind, when this all comes, this wonderful fairy tale that we live in, playing rock and roll. If that ever comes to an end, which inevitably it will. I've got a real passion for sitting in the studio like yourself and recording, being creative. It's just I've been doing it all afternoon today, actually.
Have you?
Yeah, so Elland Road's only a few miles from where I live. So one afternoon he rings us up and he goes, "You want to come up and meet Eddie Gray?" And I went, "Aye." so I go up there, and Alan Clark's there as well, Sniffer Clark.
Wow.
And a guy called Paul Rainey, who's the fullback. Yeah. So I go in and I sit down with them, and what a crack! Oh man! And Alan Clark says to me, "I detect a northeast accent." He says, "Where are you from?" I says, "You don't want to know where I'm from." I'd hear into the 1973 Cup final. When we beat Leeds United, when I was 9, I had to go to my auntie's house because she was the only one in the family with a colour telly. We had a black and white telly.
Save of the century.
Yeah, that's just. I met it. Actually, that might be it. I met Jimmy Montgomery as well.
Have you met Big Jim?
Yeah. And Dennis Stewart, who was my all-time favourite when I was a kid. And so I sat in between them, and we were looking down at this groundsman mowing this. It was off-season, mowing this billiard table of a pitch. And I said to them, "What would you have given to play on a pitch like that in the 1970s?" And they both went, "Oh!" And then they started talking about, and I was just sat there pinching myself,
Amazing.
I'm trying to think. I know I've met a couple of other famous footballers as well, but I saw Pelé play when we lived in Canada.
Right.
When I was a kid, we lived in Vancouver a very long time ago, and he played for the New York Cosmos.
New York Cosmos, yeah.
It was the tail end of his career. I think it's about 1976, 75, something like that. And we went to see him play. I mean, he was just a tiny little figure on the pitch, but it was him,
Not many people
doesn't matter, does it?
George Best and people like that, So.
My dad still says that George Best was the best player he ever saw.
Well, out of that holy, trio that people talk about, him and Bobby Charlton, my favourite was always Dennis Law.
Yeah.
There was just something about Dennis Law. I mean, let's be honest, they were all great footballers, and they all complemented each other, Apart from the fact they played for Manchester United.
Yeah, I was going to say, why are we slipping into that territory with
I
a Man City fan in the middle of us?
Well, no, I forgive Dennis Law because he played for City as well. So
he put him down, didn't he?
Can talk. You've mentioned Stewart and Dennis Law, so
are you a City
we're
fan?
all right.
Are you a City fan?
I am.
Yeah.
For my sins, yeah.
Well,
oddly,
I mean,
so just to kind of put the record straight, I am a City fan. I've not been a City fan my entire life. I actually picked City up in 1980. Well, basically the Gillingham season.
All right.
It was like my best mate is a City fan, and I was bored one weekend. Well, I wasn't following anyone at the time because my dad was never into football, so I never picked up a team.
Right.
And then my mate, he said, "Oh, look, City are playing at Reading. Come down." So I went down. I think we won 3-1, and then went off to watch England in a pub next to the stadium, and they won 3-1. And I've been hooked ever since. I mean, I can't believe, I keep pinching myself when I look at what City are like these days compared to what they're like when I started.
Well, I cannot watch Man City these days because they've got more money than God. I mean, if we had the money that Man City's got, us three could win the Premier League. It's just not. It's not an even level playing field as far as I'm concerned.
It won't last either. I think that, Pete. It's not going to last.
I know that.
But when
I
was a kid, you always had your second team. Man City were actually my second team.
There were loads of people back in the day.
Specifically because they weren't Man United.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, that's the reason why. And also, when Sunderland won the cup, and then three of the star players migrated to Man City all at once. Mickey Oswald, Dennis Stewart, and Dave Watson all went to City, and then Niall Quinn played for City, and then Peter Reid, who we had an unforgettable afternoon with at the old Roker Park in my old band. That was it. He was quite a famous guy that I met. We did a gig at the Borderline in London, and our bass player was wearing a Sunderland shirt. The publicist that we had at the time thought it would be a good idea to try and hook us up with the club. So they got in touch with the club, and Peter Reid said, I'll do that. So he comes walking down the stairs with one of our T-shirts on.
Super.
And we walked around the pitch talking about the season, and he was just talking. And I mean, that's one of the things about Scousers. They'll find a nickname for everybody. So our bass player's called Tony, and we used to call him Tone, right? All right, Tone. How can you shorten that? Well, Peter Reid used to call him Tom. All right, Tom. They get it as short. He wouldn't call me Baz. He called us Ba. As short as you can possibly get.
It must be a Scouse thing, that. Yeah.
The most ergonomic and less energetic, the better.
The very least amount you can get. Yeah.
Aye.
2 letters.
Tom Ba.
Brilliant. Amazing, man. Amazing. So have you had any embarrassing clangs, like with a famous person over the years? Have you done something or said something you shouldn't have?
Aye, the first one that immediately springs to mind was I went to the old Sunderland Empire many years ago to see a band called the Notting Hillbillies. And it was Mark Knopfler.
Yeah, Mark Knopfler.
And an old guy from, he was from Leeds actually, Brendan Croker. I think it's Brendan Croker or anyway, embarrassingly. But we knew some members of the band, and their manager, who's Ed Bicknell, is it, or somebody?
Oh, Dire Straits' manager.
Yeah. Well, he was the drummer for the Notting Hillbillies.
All right.
And so we went to see them at the Sunderland, and they were really good. I mean, it was just a night out, and we didn't pay in. Blah. I mean, it's pre-Stranglers. It's 30 years ago. This must be. And so we heard they were having a party at a hotel down on the seafront, and so we all went down there. By this time, I was 3 sheets to the wind, and I'd started using a certain type of guitar called a Schecter,
Yeah.
I had a couple of them. In fact, I've still got one somewhere. And Mark Knopfler had been known to play Schecter's. And I was in the room and we were drinking, and I'd had about 7, or I'd had a gallon, and I was wobbling like hell, and I was thinking, oh God, I'm going to get into so much trouble when I get home and all this type of shit. And he was working the room, ever the social butterfly. And he got closer and closer and closer, and somebody introduced me to him, and I just said to him, bear in mind that we were in the Gods, one of these very old Victorian theatres. Mark Knopfler was about that big, right? He was tiny. And I couldn't really see what he was playing, although I knew it was a red Stratocaster. So I said to him, do you not play the Schecter anymore? And he went, I was playing it tonight.
Oh, no way.
With a dead straight face. And I went, I was just very far away, and you only looked about this. And I went, and I dinged him on the shoulder, and he spilled his beer, and it was I just wanted the world to swallow me up, that's the only one that's. I mean, I've met an awful lot of people, but I've never really been, too in your face or fanboyish. That's just not me way. If you ever hear me utter, "Do you know who I am?" It's time to leave. Not just leave the building. It's time to leave the fucking district. Never mind the building.
That's not you. It's definitely not you.
That ain't me. I'm enjoying this crap with you two, doing this, but this is not the sort of thing that I really do.
I said to Pete, we're going to have to drag these out of him because he's not that guy.
Right. Yeah. If I didn't know you, mate, it would be a lot harder.
It's funny because we had Steve Lillywhite on last week, and of course, Steve Lillywhite's whole life is stories about being in the
just
studio.
one long clang.
I think I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Steve Lillywhite. I don't think I said anything else. It's just, and it unravelled, didn't it, Pete? It was unbelievable.
Yeah,
I didn't have to ask him any questions because it was everything naturally just flipped into the next one.
Yeah.
But lovely man. Yeah. We liked him. Good
producer. Great producer.
Oh yeah.
Very good. Very good. What's the next question?
I would say, have you had any ones of those ones where you've kind of like it's like the almost clang? It's like
the nearly clang.
The nearly clang. It's like the classic one I always cite is I took the day off work when I used to work in a record shop, and it was the day David Bowie came in the shop. And I was just like, and I would have been. We used to work in it used to be a collector's store as well. So he would have been. He would have gone upstairs into where I would have been working as well, and he would have gone through all the Bowie memorabilia and going, well, yeah, that's a bootleg. That's a fake.
You know what, Pete? You've reminded us. I was just frantically trying to. Like a swan there, my legs are going under the water like this. I'm thinking
around in circles.
I do. When we were in the Small Town Heroes band that I was in before the Stranglers, where I met the Stranglers, our management company was EG in Chelsea, who were famous in the early days for signing Roxy Music and people like that. And at the time, one of the bands that they had on their roster were Kill and Joke, who are still mates, or the worst, mates to this day. It was horribly sad when Geordie passed away, but we used to see them in the office all the time. And one day we were due to go down there, and our manager that we had, he was specifically our manager, but he worked for the company. So he had a few other tasks to do as well, and and he said, it might be a little bit difficult today. He said, Sam, the guy that's running it, he says he's got a big meeting with Michael Caine. And we all went, what, like Michael Caine, you're damn supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
There you go.
Charge! And all that, so we decided, fuck you, we're coming anyway, just to see Michael Caine anywhere we got there. And we'd missed him. Literally, our manager said to him, did you see him? Did you pass him on the stage?
no.
So, and he'd come out and sort of jump and go in a taxi and bugger off. But I mean, I was talking to him because it was before mobile phones. We were on a call box in Leicester Square somewhere, ringing. We used to go up to Leicester Square because they had a Chiquitas, which was a Mexican takeaway. All you could eat for a fiver.
Oh, Chiquitas,
And we didn't have a pot to piss in, so we used to go up there and load up on enchiladas and all these type of things. And I rang him and he went, the door's just gone. Hang on, I'll have to get the door. And I could hear in the background, fumble, and then and then I could hear this bloke going, hey, all right. And he went, he's whispering in the phone, it's him. It's Michael's here.
Amazing.
So I went, all right. I said, have a good time. I put the phone down. I says to the lads, yeah, let's get our asses down there and see if we can put me into Michael Caine. You know what I mean? Wow. So that was about the nearest that I can remember.
That's a
EG management. That wasn't David Enthoven, was it?
Who?
David Enthoven. Was he in EG?
No, it was we had a guy called Chris Kettle and a guy called Sam Alder. And one of the guys that was an A&R guy was Alex Patterson, you know, the Orb.
Yeah.
So we used to do quite a lot of sort of drinking and things with him.
Drinking and things, yeah. You can still hold your own, Baz. You and JJ.
Oh well, I tell you what, without a doubt.
There was a couple of posh bottles of whiskey that didn't last very long when we came back in the next morning. But yes, what was your thing? You forgot to have water in it.
Yeah, we do like a good off the beaten track whiskey.
Peter, he's coming down your route now. Hang on.
So when we go down to rehearse in the West Country and live in this big house and always take a bottle of whiskey. And if we haven't seen each other for 2 or 3 months, we are notorious for getting caned on the first night.
Do you have a particular whiskey of choice? Do you sort of like, I'm a bit of a Speyside fan myself.
Well, JJ likes the Islas.
Yeah.
I've always found some of them a little bit peaty. Yeah. I'm looking at the one here now. There's a Bowmore that we've got, and Sil bought me. Our manager bought me a Johnny Walker Blue Label.
Nice.
Which was smooth. But you know what? I was out in the town a few months ago with a mate of mine called Chris Catalyst. Plays with. At the moment, he's playing with, Ugly Kid Joe or somebody.
Okay.
He used to play with Ghost and Sisters of Mercy. He's a Leeds musician. Okay. Him and I went out for a drink in Leeds last year, and at the end of the night, he said to me, "Do you fancy a little nightcap before we go our separate ways?" I said, "Aye, what you got in mind?" And he got this Japanese whiskey down off the thing. Oh. The Japanese, man. I'm telling you, have you tried Japanese whiskey? Have you tried the Japanese whiskey?
I've not tried it. Do you know what? I've not migrated to the Japanese whiskey yet.
It is. I mean, in as far as I'm led to believe, it is award winning and has pipped the Scots at the post on quite a few occasions. I find that very hard to believe, but apparently they make better whiskey. Some of the whiskies they make it better than the Scots ones.
You're a little bit tender. The following morning, I think I hit a snare drum, and you and JJ went, "Oh, he's loud, isn't he?"
We absolutely. Well, the thing is, we go out and have a couple of glasses of wine when we finish the day. And then we'll go out to dinner and maybe have a couple of bottles, depending on how much company we've got. Maybe there's 4 or 5 of us. The rest of the boys usually come as well. We go out and have dinner as a band. I love it particularly, although I love our management and our crew and everybody. I love it particularly when it's just the 4 of us, the band.
Yeah.
We have such a laugh, and it's important that we're friends, because a lot of these bands. I mean, the Stranglers. Infamously, when key members have left, it's all been acrimonious. They weren't friends, although they were to start with. And to me, I mean, we're all of a certain vintage, or certainly me and him are of a certain vintage. And if you're not getting on with somebody and it's not friendly, you know, all right, it's a living, all right, you've got bills to pay, but frankly, life's too fucking short.
It's a massive thing. Being in a band, you've got to be brothers. And I've got to say, this is a really nice time to say, you made me feel so welcome.
Mate, well, you know, you pulled so many stops out. I mean, when Jim came and told us that he was fearful of not being able to do it, he went, "Don't worry." He said, "I've already taken steps and I've already got somebody on the case." And he told us it was you, and I was like, "Oh, bloody hell," you know. And then there you were, and I mean, you know, if the four of us are in the room, then for that few days you're in the Stranglers, you know what I mean?
Mate, exactly. And technically it's on my CV, so thank you. That's a fact, by the way. I
wouldn't have dreamt that you would use that. Dear me.
Yeah, it's quite high as well.
Listen, I'll tell you what, give me 1 second, I'm going to get another bottle of beer. It's just over here, I'll keep talking, all right? So anyway,
we're gonna have to wrap him up in a minute, Pete, which is a shame.
I'm just going. I think it's getting on, isn't it? Time's getting on. So I don't know how long you guys do this for. I don't know how long these things happen.
As soon as someone gets the second bottle of beer, we shut them down.
Is that what it is? All right, well, fuck you.
Lovely having you, Baz. No, mate, we have actually got to shut you down because we have run out of time. But thank you so much, mate. I hope you get to share this with everybody in Stranglers world because you are one of the nicest guys I've ever had the pleasure of.
Oh well, that's right back at you. You know what I mean? I mean, what can I say? It's. I mean, I know that we toured together with the Alarm, but that's quite a while ago now. And we haven't seen hide and hair of each other since. No. And I mean, we just hook up, and you know, you make friends in this business. A lot of people come and go. It's transient, and that's the nature of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you're cutting onto someone, so good on you, and good to virtually meet you, Pete, as well.
Well, likewise. And what I would say, Baz, is if we ever actually have the pleasure of meeting face to face, I'm looking forward to enjoying the Japanese whiskey, mate.
Mate, if I know that I'm going to meet, hey, listen, I bought a bottle for JJ for his birthday. I bought a bottle for Jim for his birthday. When we finish here, I'm going to get your details off Smiley. No. And I'm going to send you a bottle. You see if I don't. You see if I don't. You see.
You're beautiful, man.
This particular one that my friend introduced me to in Leeds last year. It was, I couldn't stop thinking. In fact, in the cab on the way home, pissed as I was, I bought myself a bottle. They're only little. They're not your big long bottles. They're only small. But you see if I don't. The bottle's going to arrive on your doorstep.
Well, you've got yourself a fan for life, mate. Now.
Well, listen, thanks everybody for tuning in to Alcoholics Anonymous this Monday evening. And he was very, very drunk. Thanks again, Baz. Love you, mate. And we'll see you soon. God bless.
Clang, the podcast.